16 top scientists failed a life-changing task, but a poor secretary discovered the amazing SOLUTI. Clara Williams moved through the bustling streets of downtown Chicago, the towering skyscrapers etching their shadows into her path. As a humble secretary at a prestigious research lab, she was the smallest cog in a massive machine of elite scientists. Amidst the frantic pace of life, she felt invisible, a whisper accompanying the sounds of urgency echoing around her. Raised by a single mother who sacrificed everything to keep food on the table, Clara represented the very essence of the American dream. A drive fueled by the lessons of hardship had her balancing the demands of a part-time job, her studies, and her elderly mother, who depended on her. Then the unthinkable happened, a national crisis struck. News spread like wildfire of a disease rapidly spiraling out of control. 16 top scientists, the brightest minds hand-picked from Ivy League schools, were brought together to solve a problem that felt insurmountable. Panic settled in, fear gripped the heart of the nation as leaders called for solutions. Clara watched from the sidelines, her heart heavy, the weight of the world resting upon those she admired but feared. Day after day, she saw them pour their lives into the lab, while the casualty counts grew. The tension was palpable, a storm hanging thick in the lab's air. Clara had always been the quiet observer, but one afternoon a seemingly irrelevant conversation caught her ear. A missing variable, a chance observation, ignited her creativity, lighting a spark in her troubled heart. Before we continue, I need to let you know about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, hit that bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can drop a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. With her heart racing, Clara found herself standing at a crossroads. Those old doubts about her worth echoed louder than ever as she weighed the risk of presenting her idea. What if they dismissed her as merely a secretary yet again? What if her idea didn't matter? Ignoring the ache in her chest, she steeled herself against the condescension she anticipated, drawing courage from her upbringing. As she knocked timidly on the lab door, the atmosphere shifted, the intensity crackling like static as they turned to face her. One by one, skeptical faces stared back. But Clara could feel her family's unwavering support buzzing like a current within her. She swallowed hard, preparing to share her insight. Her voice trembled at first, but a fire ignited as she spoke about community, about survival, about hope. Yet, as she built her case and began to see interest behind their eyes, a question shattered her moment, one that brought the room crashing back into a sea of doubt. Would they acknowledge the brilliance that often bloomed from the overlooked? Clara's heart raced as she realized the stakes had become far greater than one woman's idea. They were about humanity itself. The silence grew thick, a poignant reminder of the biases she fought and the lives that hung in the balance. Could she push through this time, or would the weight of disbelief stifle her efforts once more? The answer felt just out of reach, a fragile thread woven into the very fabric of recognition and acknowledgement. Clara's heart thudded loudly in her chest, a drumbeat of anxiety mixed with determination. The moment stretched, teasing her with what could be. She looked around the room, searching their faces for any sign of encouragement. Dr. Hartman, the lead researcher, broke the silence with a furrowed brow, and her stomach sank. He leaned forward, hands clasped as if ready to tear apart her fragile hope. Clara, what is your— But she cut him off, urgency driving her words now. I think I've noticed something that could help. The words tumbled out, each one pushed forward by the fear of being overlooked yet again. We've been approaching this problem as a strictly scientific issue, but what if we also considered social dynamics? The disease spreads in crowded areas. What about community network structures? Like how information is shared among people? A murmur rippled through the gathered scientists. Clara could see skepticism flicker, but there was also curiosity, each of them momentarily distracted from their plight. She pressed on, her voice steadier now. If we can identify the key figures in neighborhoods, perhaps we can create channels for better communication, even combat misinformation. It's not just about the disease, it's about the way information travels. Dr. Hartman's expression shifted, an eagerness sparking behind his eyes for the first time. Interesting. So, you're suggesting a model based on sociology rather than pure epidemiology? Yes. A hybrid approach, Clara said, buoyed by the slightest hint of interest. We collect data from the communities, analyze who interacts with who. We could even leverage social media to spread accurate information, get the right messages out. A ripple of excitement began to sweep through the room, but Clara could still see hesitation in the corner of Dr. Edwards' eyes, the sharp, critical voice of the group, notorious for dismissing ideas that didn't align with their scientific rigor. You do realize that this is unprecedented to address a health crisis this way? We can't simply trust communities to change behaviors. Doesn't that depend on how we engage with them? Clara fired back, the fire in her chest igniting anew. People want to do the right thing, they just need the tools and information to do it. I've seen it with my own family, and I know it's true for everyone in the community. Dr. Hartman exchanged a glance with Dr. Edwards, and suddenly the room buzzed with discourse. Clara felt a mix of dread and exhilaration. They were debating her idea as though it held value. She could almost taste it: validation, respect, the flicker of acceptance. But her heart sank again when all the voices settled on Dr. Hartman, who glanced back at Clara with a penetrating gaze. If we are to explore this, we need data, real, actionable data. All right, Clara said, her confidence still shaky but unwavering. I can work on gathering that, but I'll need your expertise. We can draft a survey or something quick, and we'll need to act fast. The scientists nodded, the seriousness of her plea settling in. She felt like she was standing on the edge of a precipice, success tantalizingly close, but uncertainty loomed. As schedules were rearranged and plans sketched out, a sense of unity unfurled, a quilt patched together by their urgency. Clara realized that she no longer felt like a mere observer. She was part of the solution, her ideas recognized and embraced. But just as hope began to bloom in her heart, a sudden announcement crackled through the lab's intercom, chilling the energy in the room. Attention, a new variant of the disease has been identified. All teams are required to shift focus immediately. Clara's heart dropped. Just as things were starting to change, uncertainty rushed back, a wave of panic washing over her. In that moment, it felt like the ground had shifted beneath her. Would her contributions now be for nothing? The echoes of urgency and fear filled the room again as scientists scrambled, but Clara's hands clenched into fists. She wasn't ready to let go. We can adapt, she urged, her voice rising above the chaos. We have to. We can strategize, combine our efforts in specific communities. This can't end here. As eyes turned toward her once more, Clara felt a sense of purpose swell inside her. The waves of doubt still crashed, but something stubborn inside her whispered to hold on. If they could just take one more step, maybe they'd keep the flicker of hope alive. Could their combined strength weather this storm? Or would the tide carry them away again? The challenge grew, and with it, the stakes heightened. Clara reflected on her own fighting spirit. She refused to be a bystander. And so she stood at the crossroads again, ready to leap into the unknown. Yet she couldn't shake the question that hung palpably in the air: were they truly ready for what came next? The room was electric with a mixture of anxiety and unease. Just as Clara thought she had piqued their interest, their focus shifted back to the fresh threat posed by the new variant. Dr. Hartman's authoritative voice sliced through the din: we need to regroup immediately. Safety protocols. Clara's voice found a crack in the chaos. Wait. What if we consider dual paths? One focused on the variant, but also using community strategies? She could see the doubt clouding Dr. Edwards' expression. Yet, this was a defining moment. She couldn't back down now. Dr. Hartman looked thoughtful. It's an aggressive path, Clara. We need to act fast. The new strain is concerning exactly. Which is why we shouldn't abandon our initial approach. She took a breath, trying to temper the rush of adrenaline that had her heart racing. The faster we get real support from the community, the better equipped we are to react. Let us pilot this in the hardest-hit neighborhoods. We can gather essential data quickly. A momentary silence fell, tension tightening the air until Dr. Hartman nodded slowly, his brows still furrowing. All right, if we're going to do this, I need solid backing. But we also need to know how we're communicating this to the community. As plans began to take shape amidst mumbles of apprehension and encouragement, Clara felt a shift in the collective mood. She wasn't just proposing an unconventional approach, she was igniting a flicker of renewed hope. Ideas flew between colleagues, and strategies began to coalesce. The room buzzed as the harsh urgency of the situation reformed into the excitement of collaboration. Let us set up focus groups, Dr. Patel suggested, excitement edging into her calm demeanor. We can gather opinions on effective messaging. Yes. And we can start by analyzing past community responses, Clara added, feeling a wave of support swell around her. I can reach out to my contacts, see what worked during past crises. But just as optimism seeped in, another urgent announcement echoed through the lab's speakers. Please remember that the healthcare system is at risk of being overwhelmed. All pending research must now address the new variant directly. Defiance surged through Clara. We can do both. We can face the new strain while working on community networks. Her voice rang out, raw and pleading. Our research doesn't have to be limited to the science of the disease alone. The scientists turned back to her, the weight of the unfolding crisis pushing against their resolve. For a moment, Clara felt she was standing on a precipice, a narrow ledge of possibility and desperation. If we pour all our efforts into one stream, we risk losing everything else. Let us keep our options open, please. Dr. Hartman's gaze remained fixed on Clara, his expression intense. You're asking a lot, Clara. This isn't just data gathering, it's a commitment to a new paradigm. Yes. And this is what we've been waiting for. A chance to make an impact, to truly connect with the people we're trying to help. If we can open pathways for communication, we'll have a greater chance of reducing the spread and saving lives. Dr. Edwards pursed his lips, skepticism still lingering. But the energy in the room shifted again, a collective realization dawning. There was urgency, yes, but there was also hope. All right, Dr. Hartman declared, his tone a mix of caution and newfound determination. We'll split the teams. Clara, you lead this social engagement initiative. Relief washed over her like a cool breeze. There was still a long road ahead, filled with uncertainty and daunting challenges, but she would embrace them. Her voice was steady and fierce. If we're committed to this, we'll need every voice and every resource. We have to act now. As plans began to form around her, Clara felt a sense of belonging she had never experienced before. She was no longer just a secretary, she was an integral part of something bigger, something deeply important. But just as she began to believe this could work, the lab doors swung open. A frantic assistant rushed in, eyes wide with fear. There's been a massive outbreak at Lakeview. It's spreading fast. The room fell silent again, and Clara's heart fell. The immediate threat loomed once more, a dark cloud overshadowing their progress. Would all their hard work be enough? Clara looked around the room at her colleagues, their eyes meeting hers with shared dread. We can do this, she whispered, even if the doubt clenched at her heart. We have to. As the reality of the outbreak set in, she knew one thing for certain, they were in for a decisive battle. Would they rise to meet it, or would the weight of fear send them sinking again? Clara had no answers, but the determination to fight burned bright within her. The question now lingered painfully: were they equipped to face what awaited them? And what personal sacrifices would they each have to make? The abrupt announcement sent waves of shock through the room. Clara's chest tightened, a shot of adrenaline stitching her to the ground. She could see the color drain from the faces around her. The gravity of the situation clung to the air, thick and desperate. Dr. Hartman's voice broke through the haze. All right, people. We need to get our heads in the game. Clara, can you gather what data is already there from Lakeview? The sooner we know what we're dealing with, the better. Yes, of course. I'll get on it right away. Clara's voice was steadier than she felt. She pushed back her panic, darting out of the conference room. As she hurried down the stark, sterile hallways of the lab, she felt the weight of responsibility settle onto her shoulders. The cacophony of beeping monitors and the scent of antiseptic filled her senses. This was no longer just about research, it was about lives hanging in the balance. People were suffering, and they needed answers. Clara dove into her desk, pulling open drawers and rifling through papers. She was determined to unearth any past studies, any community reports on outbreaks from the region. She had to gather insights quickly. The clock was ticking. Minutes dragged into what felt like hours. She flipped through pages, deciphering notes and scribbled analyses. Memories of previous crises flooded her mind, moments when communities banded together to assist each other, to help bolster health systems stressed beyond capacity. There was hope, hidden in those accounts, and she would find it. Just as she stumbled upon a file labeled Lakeview Response, her phone buzzed violently on her desk. It was Dr. Patel. Clara, you need to come back. They're dropping updates every minute. We're organizing a task force. I'm on it. Clara snapped the file shut and rushed back, her heart racing. As she reached the conference room, the scientists were in a heated discussion, voices climbing higher with urgency. Clara took a seat, flipping the file open again, her mind swirling with numbers and strategies. Clara. Dr. Hartman turned to her. What have you got? Taking a deep breath, she stood up, the file clutched tightly in her hands. I found data on previous outbreaks in neighboring areas. The way people responded, community testing sites, message boards for sharing experiences. It shows our best chance is unifying our efforts with them now. Dr. Edwards frowned. That's all well and good, but how do you expect us to implement change quickly? We're already behind. Because if we put communication at the forefront, we can galvanize the community. If we give them responsibility and roles to play, we'll have a stronger support network. People want to help. They just need to know how. Clara's voice rang with passion, the fight back in her since the moment she had walked out of that meeting. A tense moment hung in the air. Clara locked eyes with Dr. Hartman, searching for validation. Finally, he nodded slowly. All right. We'll give your plan a shot. Draft the communication strategy. If we can get these neighborhoods mobilized by this weekend, it might just give us the buffer we need. Clara felt a spark ignite within her, but dread mixed with elation. The stakes were higher than ever. Failure wasn't an option. Still, she couldn't shake the feeling creeping at the back of her mind. The urgency of change weighed heavy. The turbulent emotions swirled around them like an ominous storm. Before we go any further, Dr. Patel spoke up, her eyes shining with concern. We also need to take care of ourselves. The mental toll of this situation can break us just as easily as the virus can. Clara considered that for a moment, recognizing the truth in her words. They were facing a crisis, and if they weren't careful, they could find themselves breaking down. What will it take to keep us grounded? Clara asked, looking around the room. A moment of silence followed until Dr. Hartman replied, we share the burden. We can't be just scientists, we need to be a community, too. As the room erupted into conversation, Clara felt a shiver of fear and exhilaration. With each passing second, they solidified their mission. The question remained though, would their bond strengthen them enough to combat the impending threat that lurked in Lakeview? As the wave of uncertainty continued to crash against their plans, Clara knew one thing for sure: she would fight for every life they could save. And soon, they would be tested in ways they couldn't even begin to fathom. Clara's fingers danced across her keyboard, each keystroke a pulse of urgency. She was drafting the communication strategy, her mind racing with ideas while the clock ticked relentlessly in the background. Words flew across the screen, forming a lifeline she hoped would connect her team with the beleaguered community. Messages of hope, instruction, and unity cascaded from her thoughts, igniting a flicker of determination in her heart. Clara. Dr. Patel peered over the cluster of papers strewn across the table. Are you almost done? The task force is prepping for a meeting with state officials in 30 minutes. Just wrapping up a few more details, Clara replied, trying to muster confidence. I want to make sure we cover everything. The neighborhoods need to feel our presence. Dr. Patel nodded, but her brow furrowed with concern. What if they feel overwhelmed? People might push back if we bombard them. Clara paused. The idea had struck her like a lightning bolt. We can frame it as an invitation, not an order. Let them know they have a role. Everyone wants to feel like they matter, especially in times like these. Taking a deep breath, Clara glanced around the room, feeling the weight of her colleagues' gazes. Can we include a space for feedback? Maybe a dedicated hotline or a social media group where residents can express concerns and share resources. Dr. Hartman crossed his arms, deep in thought before breaking into a smile. That's it, Clara. If we give them a voice, they'll be more likely to step up. Emboldened by his reaction, Clara quickly typed out a brief outline of how to structure the feedback loop. Each idea seemed to spiral into another, building a network of support that could potentially bridge gaps within the community. But just as she reveled in the clarity of her plan, a shadow crossed her expression. What's wrong? Dr. Patel asked, catching the flicker of doubt. Clara hesitated, the thought of Lakeview resurfacing in her mind, the town that had become the epicenter of despair. What if we reach out, and they don't respond? We could be facing a tidal wave of silence while the clock runs out. There was a moment of silence, uncertainty wrapped around them like a thick fog. But then Dr. Hartman rebutted, his voice steady. We can't control the response, but we can control how we reach out. This is all about connection, Clara. You've already started that. Her heart raced again, feeling the sensations of unease, yet intertwined with a profound sense of purpose. Clara flexed her fingers, returning to her work. Let us make the voice of the lab echo in their homes, she declared. Minutes later, the outline was complete. Feeling the collective tension and urgency, Clara shared her strategy with everyone in the room, her heart pounding in sync with each word spoken. As she finished, she looked up to find eyes wide with admiration, appreciation radiating through the group. Your energy is contagious, Dr. Patel said, a smile breaking across her face. Now, it's time to launch this. Right now? Clara asked, suddenly feeling the full weight of it all, a sense of vulnerability and hope mixed with the uncertain tides of fear. Yes. We need to act, not just hope. Dr. Hartman's determination echoed through the room, sparking a fire among her teammates. They prepared to implement the plan, ready to distribute the communication, and sent Clara into a whirlwind of excitement. She felt the team begin to rally, not just as scientists but as a collective, lifting the burden of dread together. As they moved forward, turning the plan into action, Clara found herself distracted by a lingering thought. What if the response wasn't what they hoped for? What if a family in Lakeview needed help but felt too afraid to reach out? Suddenly, that thought transformed into resolve. They would not just communicate, they would be present. With determination, Clara sent the last email, pushing send with a steady hand. Let us get to work, she said, feeling an undercurrent of bravery surge through her. Yet amidst the rush, the storm clouds of doubt still loomed. Overhead. Would the narrow paths they had created be enough to save the lives that hung in the balance? That question festered in the air worse than the silence they dreaded. The tension mounted as the clock ticked, and Clara braced herself for the next hurdle. How would they face the coming storm? With the gulf yawning wide ahead of them, Clara realized the true battle had only just begun, and the fight for Lakeview was still waiting in the shadows. The atmosphere in the room shifted as Clara glanced at the clock again. Time felt like a coiled spring, ready to snap. The team gathered around her, their faces a mixture of hope and anxiety. She could sense the urgency building, each second stretching tighter, amplifying the weight of their task. Okay, everyone, Clara began, her voice steady despite the frenzy swirling in her mind. Let us break into groups. We have to brainstorm ways to engage the community effectively. We need to show them they're not alone. With a nod from Dr. Patel, they divided into clusters, bouncing ideas back and forth rapidly. It was exhilarating to witness minds engaging, igniting flames of creativity. However, moments of laughter quickly turned into seriousness as they discussed what needed to be done. Clara moved between the groups, feeling the pulse of the room. The ideas flowed from door-to-door visits in the most affected neighborhoods, to hosting community listening sessions in the park, where families could gather and share. She felt lighter with each suggestion, the lingering shadows of doubt beginning to disperse. But a persistent voice in the back of her mind whispered reminders of Lakeview's struggles. "Make sure we have personal stories," Clara prompted. "People need to know this isn't just about science. It's about lives." Dr. Hartman approached her, his brow tilted with concern. "Are we ready to face real trauma?" Some people won't react kindly. They might see us as outsiders. A shiver crawled down Clara's spine. Her stomach twisted at the thought of being met with hostility. But as she looked at her team, resolve settled in. "We're not here to judge. We are here to offer understanding and help. Every voice matters." Finally, they wrapped up the brainstorming session and moved to create flyers and social media posts that promote their plan. With every word crafted, a wave of hope surged through Clara. They began assembling the pieces that could soon become the bridge back to the community, even if it felt shaky at first. "Let us have a team meeting before we send everything out," Dr. Patel suggested, looking serious. Clara noticed how everyone seemed on edge, but their determination to push through fueled her. As the team reconvened, something unexpected happened. A knock echoed from the door. The sound cut through the intensity like a hot knife. Clara turned, her heart racing. The door creaked open to reveal a young woman, her eyes wide and searching. "Excuse me," her voice trembled, but there was urgency behind it. "Are you the ones trying to help the people in Lakeview?" The room fell silent, a collective breath held in anticipation. Clara's pulse quickened. This was at the moment she had been waiting for. The connection. "Yes." Clara stepped forward, eager and ready to listen. "We want to help." "What is going on?" The young woman shifted her weight, visibly wrestling with fear and desperation. "My family were struggling to cope. We don't know where to turn and their essay gathering storm, literally and figuratively. I'm so lost. We just want someone to care." Clara felt the weight of her words crashing against her like waves. Here was the reality that faced them, raw and unfiltered. But amidst those fears was a flicker of hope. Clara sensed it within herself and thrust it out gently towards the woman standing before her. "Your voice matters," Clara said firmly, hoping her conviction would soothe the chilling uncertainty surrounding them. "Let us work together to find a way forward." The young woman exchanged glances with the rest of the team, and Clara could see them shifting from anger and skepticism to something softer, curiosity. But just as that glimmer began to take shape, the woman continued, "There's more you need to know about what's happening in Lakeview, things you haven't heard yet." Clara's breath caught. What could possibly come next? Just as she was starting to think they could solidify a plan, the very foundation beneath them seemed ready to crack. The stakes had just grown higher, and nothing could be the same again. What devastating truth lay ahead, waiting to be revealed? The young woman took a deep breath, her eyes darting to the floor as if the ground itself might swallow her fears. "You don't understand," she said, shaking her head slowly. "There's been more than just the storm building. Some people are falling apart, and others some are hiding." Clara's heart raced. She stepped closer, encouraging her to open up. "What do you mean? Hiding from what?" The young woman glanced at the team, then back at Clara, vulnerability etched on her face. "There are stories of loss and despair that go beyond just flooding. People are scared to speak up because of stigma. They think if they show their pain, they will be shunned. We're losing each other while pretending everything is okay." Silence engulfed the room, thick as cotton. Clara could feel the weight of the woman's confession pressing down on everyone. "What should we do?" Dr. Patel finally broke the silence. He leaned forward, interest sparking a fire in his eyes. How do we reach those who are suffering in silence? The young woman bit her lip, her hands trembling. You need to create a safe space. Not just events but real conversations, one-on-one discussions that show people you care. Maybe even a support group. But it has to be led by people from Lakeview, not outsiders like you. They need trust. Clara nodded, absorbing her words. This was more than just mobilizing volunteers or organizing events. They were talking about creating a core of community, a family that could support each other without fear of judgment. Every story matters, Clara said, her voice firm. If we can share our struggles, maybe we can break the cycle. But we need to ensure this is inclusive. We need volunteers from Lakeview to help lead. Will you help us connect with more people? The young woman looked uncertain, but deep inside Clara saw the spark of hope flickering in her eyes. Yes, I can try. Then, from the back of the room, someone else spoke up. It was Janet, a quieter team member who rarely interjected but clearly felt drawn to the young woman's plight. If we do this, we have to be ready to face the consequences. Some stories might hurt to tell. The tension transformed. It was no longer just a meeting, it was a shared moment of vulnerability. Clara could see how each face reflected fear, empathy, and a burgeoning sense of community. Those stories might hurt, Clara replied, but they matter. They bring us together. We can't help if we don't know what we're dealing with. It's time for a real conversation. With that, Clara rallied everyone's energy as they started forming ideas on how to design the support system. She felt invigorated, a clear purpose igniting her spirit. This was moving beyond a project, it was starting to feel like a lifeline. The young woman finally seemed to come alive with the prospect of connection. If we can find a few trustful voices to share their stories, others might follow. Maybe we can also organize a community day, or something like that, to get the ball rolling. Great idea. Dr. Hartman chimed in. But we need to ensure it doesn't come off as patronizing. Focus on highlighting their experiences. Just then, the atmosphere began to buzz again, ideas ricocheting and blending into a cohesive rhythm. Clara felt a swell of gratitude. This was more than just her vision, it became a tapestry of shared hopes woven from the hearts of all those in the room. But as they began discussing logistics, the young woman hesitated, her gaze shifting again. But there's someone who knows everything. He's been recording all the changes, you need to talk to him. He can fill in the gaps. The air turned electric, anticipation buzzing through Clara as she asked, who is he? I can take you to him, the woman replied, her voice steadying. But getting to him will be the easy part. Trust me, as he uncovers truths, it will shake everything you thought you understood about Lakeview. Clara's stomach lurched at the thought of what might be uncovered. They were about to plunge into the depths of hidden pain, but they would do it together, armed with compassion and resolve. Let us do it, she stated firmly, rounding her team. This is just the beginning. And as they moved forward, Clara could feel the winds of change gather strength, setting the stage for whatever revelations lay ahead. What truths awaited them, hidden in shadows, just waiting to come to light. With a determined nod, Clara felt her resolve harden. They were not just breaking ground, they were about to dig deep into the soil of Lakeview, searching for buried stories that needed to see the light. Okay, let us make a plan. We can meet tomorrow to discuss how to reach out to the community and set up this support network. We need it to feel safe and genuine. The young woman, still holding a flicker of hope in her eyes, added, we can do this. It's time people realize they're not alone. Each member of the team seemed to absorb the weight of her words. Clara could sense the shift in the room, an invisible thread connecting their hearts as they prepared to embark on this journey together. Later that evening, as Clara returned to her apartment, her mind was a whirlpool of thoughts. She remembered the young woman's face, her raw vulnerability. It felt like a call to arms. The urgency to help, to listen, and to open doors was more profound than ever. As Clara sat on her small couch, her hands cupped a steaming mug of tea. She glanced out of the window at the darkening sky, clouds swirling ominously above Lakeview. Even the weather seemed to be reflecting the turmoil below the surface. It reminded her that in storms, both literal and figurative, there were always others looking for shelter. Her phone buzzed, pulling her from her thoughts. It was Janet asking about the follow-up meeting, eager to chip in more ideas. Clara smiled at her enthusiasm. "Let us brainstorm some potential leaders from the community," she replied, inspiration igniting once again. That night, she struggled to sleep. Every creak in the building seemed amplified, echoing the uncertainty that sometimes scuttled through her mind. Would the community trust them? Would they be brave enough to share their stories? Clara clenched her eyes shut, putting on her brave front. She had to believe that this could work because people depended on it. Morning dawned with a cool freshness, invigorating Clara as she drove to meet the team. She arrived at the meeting place, a local community center with peeling paint but warmth that radiated from its walls. Her heart pounded a little faster as she stepped inside, half excited and half nervous. The room began filling with familiar faces. One by one, they shared ideas, enthusiasm spreading like wildfire. Janet suggested inviting local leaders, while Dr. Patel spoke about the importance of mental health resources. Clara felt each idea building towards something great. But just as they began to lay down the groundwork, a tall man with sharp features and an intense gaze entered. The young woman from yesterday stood at his side, introducing him as Marcus. "He's the one I wanted you to meet," she said, her voice trembling with a mix of excitement and fear. "Thanks for coming," Clara said, gesturing him to join the circle. Marcus had a presence that demanded attention, with an air of authority tempered by something gentler lurking behind his eyes. "What can you share with us? The community seems to be in need of strong voices." Marcus seemed to weigh their readiness carefully before he spoke. "I've seen the struggles. People are drowning not just in water, but in pain and isolation," he said, his voice low but rich with emotion. "I've been collecting stories. I've spoken to dozens over the past year. They need you." Suddenly, Clara felt the weight of responsibility sink like a stone in her stomach. "We need to protect them," she murmured. "They're sharing their truths. But how can we do this without stepping on their toes?" Marcus locked eyes with her, intensity flooding the air. "Listen to them. They will guide you if you let them." The room fell silent as everyone processed his words. As Clara met the gaze of each team member, she could see the determination building again, a newfound wave of purpose washing over them. But there was something unspoken in Marcus's tone, a warning cloaked within his wisdom. The walls felt suddenly much closer, shadows creeping back into the corners of the room. What truths lay within those collected stories? Was Lakeview really ready to face the depths of its pain? As they started sharing their plans, the groundwork for engagement taking shape, an uneasy knowledge settled over Clara that they were on the brink of something much bigger. She had to know what Marcus had seen, the stories he had gathered. And if Lakeview was about to face its reality, how would they respond? Armed with newfound urgency, Clara took a deep breath, ready to push ahead. Yet a gentle voice echoed in her mind. What if the truth was too much to bear? The door opened a little wider, but Clara couldn't shake the feeling that they were stepping into a storm greater than any of them had anticipated. And at that moment, she knew they had no choice but to ride it out together. What lay at the heart of Lakeview's secrets? Would they be ready for the revelations waiting just beneath the surface? The next morning felt different. Clara woke with the sun streaming through her window, illuminating dust motes dancing lazily in the air. It was a beautiful day, but an undercurrent of tension lingered. Today was crucial. Today, they would reach out to the community, stepping beyond their comfort zones. She donned a soft turquoise sweater that felt comforting against her skin, as if wrapping her in a protective layer. On her way to the community center, her thoughts raced. With every block she crossed, she wondered how many stories lay behind the closed doors of Lakeview's homes. Would those families be willing to share? Would they trust strangers with their pain? Upon arriving, Clara found the conference room buzzing with energy. It was filled with bright faces, their collective excitement palpable. Tables were strewn with papers, markers, and photos pinned up from past community events. And there, at the head of the table, sat Marcus, his calm demeanor a grounding force. "Let us focus on how to reach out," he started, his voice steady, cutting through the hum of chatter. He handed out flyers meant for the community, invites to a gathering they would host that weekend, a chance to share stories. Clara could see the flicker of doubt in Janet's eyes. "Do we really think this will work? What if no one shows up?" "Or worse," Clara added, voicing her greatest fear, "what if they come, but don't feel safe enough to talk?" Marcus held up a hand, his gaze sweeping across the room. "This is bigger than all of us. It's about trust, about showing them we care. We have to establish that in every interaction." With renewed purpose, they began planning, splitting tasks among the team. Clara volunteered to create outreach materials. She couldn't shake the image of lonely faces, afraid to reach out, hidden behind their walls. It pushed her, fueled her efforts. Later that afternoon, Clara stepped outside for a break, the fresh air filling her lungs. She leaned against the building, letting the moment soak in. She realized she was scared, overwhelmed by the enormity of what lay ahead. "What if I fail them?" she whispered to the breeze. Just then, she noticed the young woman from the previous meeting chatting with someone nearby, her laughter light and infectious. Clara approached, curiosity piqued. The young woman's name was Lily, and she radiated warmth that tugged at Clara's heart. "I heard you all are working to create a support network," Lily said, her eyes sparkling with enthusiasm. "That's so important. People need a place to be heard." "Exactly," Clara replied, feeling a connection spark. "But we're afraid it won't be enough." "Just listen," Lily encouraged. "Sometimes, that's all people need. To be seen and heard without judgment." As they talked, Clara learned about Lily's own struggles. The young woman had faced heartbreak, feeling isolated in her pain. Her courage to share resonated deeply, and something clicked within Clara. This was why they were doing this. But as she turned back towards the community center, she spotted Marcus speaking to an older man, his face clouded with concern. Clara strained to hear snippets of their conversation. Silent battles, past scars. A chill ran down her spine. What had that man experienced? What were the stories hidden beneath the surface, ready to rise to the light? As Clara walked over, Marcus caught her gaze. There was a glance shared between them, an unspoken understanding of the weight of their task. They were all in this together, facing the shadows of Lakeview. With her heart thrumming in her chest, Clara knew this was only the beginning. She felt an urgency to dig deeper, to uncover the stories waiting to unfold. But the lingering question remained: would facing those stories help heal a community, or could it tear them apart? And as the sun began to set, Clara realized that navigating through uncertainty was a journey filled with both fear and hope. She could only brace herself for what was to come. As she stepped back into the room, she felt the tide building. Would the waters of Lakeview rise, or would they find their way back to calm? The week flew by in a blur of meetings, planning sessions, and relentless conversations. Clara felt like a whirlwind of energy, every day brighter and heavier all at once. The community gathering was just around the corner, and anticipation crackled in the air like static electricity. As she settled into her seat on the morning of the event, nerves danced in her stomach. What if no one shows up? What if they do but don't feel safe? Clara's mind swung between optimism and anxiety. The room trembled with excitement and uncertainty. Colored banners hung from the ceiling, filled with inviting messages about kindness, support, and community. Clara took a deep breath, feeling the warmth enveloping her. This was new, this was big. "Are we ready?" she asked, glancing around at her team. Dr. Patel and Janet beamed back, their enthusiasm palpable despite the looming echo of dread. Marcus stood to one side, confident and calm. Together, they radiated hope. "Let us do this," Marcus announced, his voice ringing with conviction. The moment they opened the doors, a flow of people filled the room: families, singles, the young, the old. Clara watched as they began to gather, cautious steps edging toward the promise of connection and safety. But as the first conversations ignited, Clara felt a knot clench in her gut. She parsed through worried whispers and hopeful smiles, each voice carving out a narrative. This is it, she thought. The moment of truth. Then Lily stepped forward, navigating through a cluster of attendees. Clara's heart swelled as Lily stood at the microphone, her voice finding strength. We're here to share and listen, we're here to connect. You're not alone. And just like that, stories began to spill forth. Tales of heartbreak, loss, resilience. Faces illuminated by honesty, each shared experience chipping away at the silence that had trapped so many. Clara could feel the gravity of fear melting under the warmth of vulnerability. Tears glistened in the corners of eyes as one older woman recounted her struggle to maintain hope during the hardest days. Clara watched nearby, the woman's anguish tugged at her heart, but it ignited a fire inside her too. She saw others leaning forward, heartfelt expressions uniting them in shared pain and healing. Amidst the emotional catharsis, a revelation swept through Clara's chest. The power of connection was extraordinary. The more stories emerged, the more the tightness in her stomach relaxed, unlocking a feeling of pure love wrapping around the room. As the evening faded and the last stories were shared, Clara moved through the crowd. Every exchange was golden, a simple shot of compassion braided through the chaos. She felt transformed, and somewhere deep within, a seed of hope was taking firm root. But when a familiar voice rose above the gathering, it carried a weight that silenced the space. It was Marcus. Clara turned to him, curiosity piqued. Sometimes, he said, his expression serious, the scars we carry, they don't simply fade, they shape us. And while the road has been long and challenging, it's our responsibility, our honor to uplift one another. A hush fell. Clara's heart soared as she felt the collective realization settle in. This was more than a gathering, it was an awakening. Healing required effort but came from deeply rooted connection, empathy, and support. With the event concluding, the room transformed into an embrace of warmth and camaraderie. Clara looked around, her heart full of pride for the many who had opened up. Today had forged bonds stronger than fear. As people filtered out of the room, Clara caught sight of Lily. Thank you for today, she said, her eyes bright. We need more moments like this. Clara nodded, feeling tears prick her eyes. This was just the start. We'll keep this going, we have to. Leaving the event, Clara walked home through the now moonlit streets. The glow of streetlights illuminated her path, each step forward feeling lighter. Striding with purpose, she felt the heartbeat of the community pulsing around her. In that moment, she realized that the storms that had loomed heavy over Lakeview were beginning to break apart, giving way to skies tinged with hope. Yet, another thought flickered in her mind. As much as they had achieved, the real journey was only beginning. The stories, the struggles, the shared pains, they would bind them together as they navigated through whatever lay ahead. Clara reached her apartment and looked out at the city beneath her, heart racing with renewed possibility. No matter how rough the road, they were ready to face it together, armed with hope, compassion, and the undeniable strength of community. The hard work was just starting, each voice mattered, and together, they would rise. And with that revelation, Clara felt a surge of gratitude fill her heart. Her dreams were woven into the fabric of Lakeview, an irreplaceable piece, and she would stand steadfast in her commitment to help in whatever way she could. Clara knew this deep connection could heal the most hidden wounds. She was ready to embrace whatever came next. Now, it was time for the world to see Lakeview at its best, a community rising together. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. Comment your reactions and feelings about the ending. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this transformation. You need to subscribe now. This is the moment to show your support. Don't wait not even one more second to share. Only true fans understand the importance of supporting the channel through these actions.